Hello, and welcome back to Sharks Happen. My name is Hal. I'm your host, going over shark attacks from the 1900s till present, mostly large sharks, and we're going to start out over in Western Cape Province, South Africa. Dyer Island, the date is September 3rd, 2017. Sivuyile Xelela, he is a poacher, and he and another large group of poachers left their mainland. They wait until whenever the water's calm enough, they'll do a 3-mile swim to Dyer Island, and they'll dive down and they'll pick up their abalone and then they'll make the 3-hour swim back. So they usually swim out 3 hours, free dive 3 hours, holding their breath to collect the abalone, and then make the 3-hour swim back. Most of them have to do it. They can't find work. Sivuyile, they say, has his wife now. She's pregnant, and she had just moved to the town that he's living in and doing this poaching from, and he has to do the poaching to support his family. So they're all out, and Sivuyile is a little bit ahead of them. Now they say that when they get past the kelp beds, there's a big deep drop, and they have to make it past this deep drop from the safety of the kelp beds to make it to where they're at Dyer Island and they're doing their diving for the abalone. It sounds like when they got to that point, that's when the shark came up. Xelela was a little bit ahead of the group. Shark came up and grabbed him, took him under, and then lifted him back out of the water and shook him around. And by that point, everybody's swimming away. They just scattered. One of them had a cell phone protected and a few condoms. That must be like standard practice for them. They took it out, called for help. The authorities get there. They recovered Xelela's body. He just had the wounds to his leg, so it sounds like the shark came up, like it would do to a seal or a sea lion at that island, and grabbed onto his leg and shook him and let him go when it found out, had that bony leg and it didn't have what it thought was going to be, that oily blubber that they have on their normal prey. So let it go, and they got him back to his village where they buried him. So that's our story of Xelela, and we'll continue on. Okay, now we're going to head over off the coast of California near Atascadero Beach. The date is April 28th, 1957. Peter Savino, 25 years old. He and his friend Daniel, who is 22 years old, they're out with a group of swimmers, and they're swimming about 50 meters from shore, it says. It's about 1:30. And a current takes the two of them out. Now they're 300 to 400 meters from shore, and they're trying to swim their way back in because they did not want to be way out there, of course. So they're swimming back in, and Peter gets tired, so Daniel lets him grab onto his shoulder, and now he's swimming, towing his buddy. And he says he feels a swirl of water, and Peter disappears over a large wave. He pops up and screams, "I've been hit by a shark," and just then he raises up his arm, and he can see blood coming from his friend's arm. And the shark surfaces between the two of them. He says water's all bubbly. It's 19-foot great white. They always talk about bubbly, boiling water with these big, big greats. And so water's boiling, sharks between the two of them. Daniel yells at him, "We got to swim to shore." Starts swimming to shore as fast as he can. When he turned back to look, Peter was gone. He gets in, he gets help. The authorities get out. They drop a 6.5 meter launch into the water, and they do a search of the water, and the officer on the boat spotted a shark as big as the launch, so a 20-foot shark. Says it's not a basking shark. They asked him, they said, "You must have saw a basking shark." He says this was definitely not a basking shark. So you got two choices there in those waters. So it should be the tiger, which is usually not there, which I would say it's probably not, and the great white, which it probably is. The fact that he says that it's not a basking shark means that, he's seen basking sharks and white sharks, and you can tell the difference between a basking shark and just about any shark. The problem with them trying to pass off a basking shark as a great white is the body's huge, and all of a sudden you get past the dorsal and the thing gets skinny, like it's wearing skinny jeans. That's just not going to happen. Anytime you see a shark over 23 feet, it's a basking shark, and it's going to have that skinny jeans back feature to it. Not to mention the sad looking dorsal fin compared to the dorsals on these guys. So that's our story of Pete Savino. They never did recover the body. We'll put it down as an attack and a predation. Okay, now we're going to head over to New South Wales, Australia, to Northern Arabian Beach. The date, March 2nd, 1935. Herbert McFarlane, 22. He and a friend are out, sounds like doing body surfing, and they're about 10 yards off the shore, but it's high tide, and it's caused, they say, a deep channel that leads almost right up to the water. So the two of them are out, they're about 10 yards off the shore, but they're in pretty deep water where they're at. And Herbert tells his friend, I'm gonna swim down a little bit and catch some wave over there. So he swims about 100 yards away from his friend, and all of a sudden it's about 5:30 at night, and he starts screaming. Screams for help. His buddy is too far away. There's cross currents. Like I said, that the cross current is what made the channel even deeper, they say. And his friend is stuck in the currents. He can't get over to him. So there's a guy on the beach, and he runs out, and he's going to take and cut an angle to where Herbert's at. So he gets into the water, but the currents grab him, and it's all he could do to swim back to the beach. So he runs over straight perpendicular to the beach to where Herbert's at, and then he enters the water. In the meantime, a guy came out of the surf club and ran down and jumped into the water. He was in the surf club, heard the screams. He ran down the beach, jumped into the water. So these two gentlemen swim out, and they get to him, and they said, the one said that he was swimming, and there was no power to his swimming at all, and he was gasping for air, and when they got to him, he just said, get me out of here. So they get him, take him up to the beach, and hand him over to the, now there's paramedics on the scene, somebody to help them. And the one witness said he didn't even think about sharks being out there when he went out there, and he shuddered to think about it. But you know, very rare, very, very rare for a rescuer to be bit when they're helping somebody out, which is an odd thing, because they'll be biting on the person that they bit, but they won't touch the two people that are right next to them walking them in, or that girl that slipped and fell and the shark turned and got on him. The guy fought the shark, punched the shark. Finally, the shark let go after it removed the arm, and he was able to pick her up and throw her into shore. So he's obviously standing right on the shark. Shark doesn't touch him. So, you know, it's an odd thing with them. And they've said that a shark will pick somebody out in a group of people, and it'll give them the bump from the bump and bite, and it'll come back to that same person. It'll avoid everybody else and go back to that very same person. So these sharks are something else as far as their intelligence. And they got him on the beach. They said that the wound exposed his leg bone from his knee to his hip, and the wound was such that they couldn't get a tourniquet around him. So I'm thinking it was too high on the hip to get anything to tie around it. They just put towels on it, and he unfortunately passed away, probably from blood loss and shock. We're going to put that down as an attack, no predation. Okay, now we're going to head out to Pringle Bay, which is Western Cape Province, South Africa. The date is December 28th, 1997. Ian James Hill, he's 39 years old. He is out doing spearfishing. It's about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He's about 350 to 400 meters from shore, and he's in 10 meters of water, so about 30 feet of water, give or take. And people are on the beach, people are in the water, and they look out and there's commotion. People had seen a large tail fin start slapping the water real close to his float. One of the witnesses said that it just the water had turned red. He could see the splashing and the fins of the shark as this attack was going on, and the last thing he saw of the spear fisherman was his leg and his flipper sticking up out of the water, and then he disappeared. Another gentleman was driving down the road, and he had looked off to the side, noticing out of the corner of his eye the commotion, and looked out, and he could see the orange float bobbing up and down with the shark's tail and all the thrashing in the water as the attack was happening too. They got authorities out there to search for the body right away, and they could not find anything of the body. They found parts of his mask, his swim fins. The mask had scrapes that they said was probably from a shark. And I think they found a little bit of his dive clothes, but they did not find anything of him. And then I believe it was the next day, the police divers, it might have been that day, but police divers did or police searchers, divers noticed a 6-meter great white in the water, so you're talking a 20-foot great white, probably responsible for that attack. It sounds a lot like the attack that happened on Lloyd Skinner, same type of thing, except Lloyd was just standing there in the water, and this just monstrous, they said dinosaur big shark came up behind him, so kind of reminds me of that. Sounds like the same size shark. That's an attack and a predation. Okay, now we're going to finish out our unprovoked attacks over in the Sea of Java, July of 1945. This is not even an actual attack. We won't be keeping records of this because this is not the shark's faults. Japanese submarine pulls up to Cheribon in northern Java, and the soldiers go in and they grab 90 civilians, including women and children. They load them up onto the sub. Once they have the 90 people on top of the sub, they're on the deck of the sub, and they're in between the two. They have a fore and an aft machine gun on the deck, and both of those are faced at the people this whole time. They set sail, and they head out to the middle of Java Sea, and they're gone for about an hour. The sun's almost setting now, and the women and children are on the deck, and they're crying and screaming. They don't know what's going to happen. They're thinking they're going to get shot. Suddenly the sub is slowing down, slows down, and then just drops out from under them, sending all 90 people into the ocean, into shark-infested waters, and every one of them but one are eaten by sharks before a fisherman shows up and picks him out of the water. He had lost an arm and lost his foot, and before he passed away, he was able to tell him what happened. After the war, they went through the Japanese files, but they had obviously destroyed all the files on this sub and on this attack, and nobody ever stood trial for 90 people being taken out and dropped purposely into shark-infested waters. That's murder by shark. I have more stories of murder by shark we'll get into in further episodes, but this one being the worst by far of anything I've ever read. I had to put that out there. Now, I'm not saying that, you know, that we should be mad at the Japanese or anything. Atrocities happen in all wars by everybody. We did our fair share in probably every war we were in, so I don't think that, you know, people do bad shit sometimes, and that's just what ended up happening there. And like I said, no records of this one are going into my stats because these sharks would not have had access to these people. So that's our story of the atrocity at Cheribon. You should check it out. You can just Google atrocity at Cheribon. Fascinating story. Can't believe I never heard of this. But it happened in 1945, right around the time in Indianapolis. So we'll move on and we'll get to What Were You Thinking? Okay, now we're going to finish out our show with What Were You Thinking? We're going to head out to New South Wales, Australia, Conjola Lake, the 1937, June of 1937, I believe it is, but not important for this. There's Raymond Hemsworth is the gentleman who ended up getting bit. But him, his dad John, his brother Alan are in one boat. It sounds like they got another boat with them. Then they discover an 8-foot gray nurse shark swimming into the lake from the ocean. So they're going to try to keep it from getting into the lake. It sounds like that's what they're doing. And the two boats seem to maneuver the shark, and they get him into 3 foot of water. Now, when they get him into the 3 foot of the water, Alan Hemsworth grabs onto the tail, so they're alongside of the shark. Alan grabs onto the tail, or Raymond grabs onto the tail. His brother Alan is in the front, and he grabs it near the head. Now, like I said, 2 boats were corralling it to get it into the shallow water. What the hell are they thinking trying to grab a shark like that anyway? But this other boat comes along that they're with, and it was probably trying to help them out, but the boat kicked off the other boat, knocking Alan, who's in the front by the shark, into the water. So now Alan's in the water with a pissed off shark, probably a dead tired shark, but a pissed off shark, and his brother's hanging onto the tail, trying to keep it from getting to Alan. And the shark, they can fold in half, man. You gotta watch these things. It did exactly that. Probably broke its hand free just before spinning around, but grabbed onto his arm. So now Raymond's got an 8-foot gray nurse shark clamped on his arm, and it will not let go. It's on there so long that Alan's able to get into the boat, grab an axe, or maybe the dad hands him the axe, but kills the shark with an axe to be able to get his brother's arm out of it. His brother only needed 12 stitches. I mean, those are those gray nurses, they have all those teeth all over the place. It looks like it's going to be hell to pay with. Well, they're just little, you know, they're round, so you're only going to need 1 or 2 stitches. So 12 stitches and he was fine. But I mean, what were you thinking? What were you going to do? Pick the shark up out of the water, put it into your boat when it's still alive? Another one of those stories that explains how women live so much longer than men. So that's our story, that's our show. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you join me in a few more days for another show. But until then, if you go into that water, you are much more afraid of those sharks than they are of you.